The letter was folded into thirds and tucked underneath his old watch in the back of the drawer. It was not addressed to me, it was not meant for me. The handwriting on the front said his name, not mine, but the words inside, the ones that took me exactly 4 minutes to read and 48 hours to stop shaking over, those words were about me. Every single line was about me, about what I did not know, about what he had been hiding. About what the woman who wrote that letter knew that I did not, and the worst part was not the betrayal. The worst part was realizing that I had already felt it. I had felt something wrong for over a year. I had asked questions. I had cried in the shower. I had apologized for being suspicious when I was not suspicious at all. I was just paying attention. And the people around me, the man I shared a bed with, the family I cooked dinner for every Sunday, they had all looked me in the face and told me I was imagining things. Before I tell you everything, I want to ask you something. Because I asked myself this same question for weeks after I found that letter. Is it worse to be betrayed by someone who stopped loving you? Or is it worse to be betrayed by someone who never saw you as a real person to begin with? Stay with me. Because by the end of this story, the answer might surprise you. And if any part of what I am about to tell you sounds familiar, if you have ever been made to feel crazy for trusting your own gut, I want you to leave a comment below. Because you were not crazy, you never were. My name is Sarah, and I am going to tell you about the 4 minutes that ended my marriage and gave me my life back. But I need to start a little before that drawer. I need to start with who I was when I walked into this story because that matters. It matters because I was not a naive woman. I was not someone who ignored every sign. I was someone who loved deeply and gave completely and stayed far too long in a house where I was the only one building anything real. I met Daniel when I was 27. He was charming in the way that certain men are charming, not loud, not obvious, but quiet and steady and warm in a way that made you feel chosen. He remembered small things. He would ask about my mother by name. He would notice when I got a haircut. He would bring me coffee exactly the way I liked it without being asked. I thought that kind of attention meant he loved me. I thought a man who paid attention like that must be present, must be honest, must be safe. I was wrong about all of that, but I did not know it yet. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. The proposal was beautiful, not over the top, not performative, just us on a quiet evening, the ring in a little wooden box he had carved himself, him asking me in a voice so low and certain that I cried before he even finished the sentence. I said yes without hesitating. I said yes because I genuinely believed I had found the right person. I said yes because for the first time in my adult life, I felt completely safe. We married a year later. The wedding was small, exactly what I wanted. His family sat on one side, mine on the other. His mother, a woman named Patricia, sat in the front row in a cream-colored dress that was just formal enough to signal that she considered herself important at this event. She smiled at me when I walked down the aisle, but it was the kind of smile that did not reach her eyes. I noticed it. I filed it away. I told myself I was being sensitive. The first year of our marriage was good, or at least it felt good. We had a small apartment, a shared routine, the kind of easy comfort that makes you believe the hard part is behind you. We were building something. We talked about buying a house. We talked about the future with names and plans and a certainty that felt solid. But somewhere in the second year, things shifted. Not dramatically. Not in a way I could point to and say, look, there it is, that is the moment things broke. It was quieter than that. It was the way a light dims slowly enough that you do not notice until the room is already dark. Daniel started working late, not every night, but often enough that it became normal. He started being less present at the dinner table, not in an obvious phone-on-the-table way, but in a distant way, a somewhere-else way. He would look at me while I was talking and I would finish my sentence and realize he had not heard a single word. I would ask if something was wrong and he would say no, everything was fine, he was just tired. And I would believe him because I wanted to believe him. Then came Patricia. I need to pause here and explain Patricia properly because she is not a side character in this story. She is the center of it in ways I did not understand until much, much later. Patricia was Daniel's mother, and she was the kind of woman who had decided very early in life that her needs were the only needs that mattered. She was not loud about it. She did not make scenes in restaurants. She was polite in that careful, controlled way that women who know how to manipulate have perfected over decades. She would ask you how you were doing while already deciding she did not care. She would compliment your cooking while subtly suggesting her recipe was better. She would say, of course, dear, when you told her something, and then she would do the exact opposite. I had noticed all of this during the engagement. I had told Daniel gently that I sometimes felt his mother was a little dismissive toward me. He had smiled and told me that was just her personality, that she was that way with everyone, that I would get used to it. He made it sound like a quirk, a minor thing, not worth worrying about. I should have pushed harder, I did not. 3 months into our second year of marriage, Patricia started calling Daniel more. Not occasionally, not for emergencies, but constantly. Twice a day, sometimes 3 times. I would come home and he would be on the phone with her in the bedroom with the door closed. I would knock and he would hold up one finger like I was an interruption. I would wait, and then when the call ended, he would come out and be slightly irritable in that way people are when someone has talked them into a mood. they do not fully understand themselves. I asked him once carefully whether everything was okay with his mother. He said she was just going through a hard time. When I asked what kind of hard time, he said it was complicated and that he did not want to get into it. When I asked if I could help in any way, he said he appreciated it but no, he had it handled. He had it handled. That phrase began to appear more and more. He had it handled. I did not need to worry. He would take care of it. Everything was fine. I started to feel like a guest in my own marriage. Not dramatically, not in a way that made me throw things or scream or issue ultimatums. I am not built that way. I am the kind of person who gets very quiet when I am frightened. I get very still, I watch, I pay attention. And what I started paying attention to was the space that was growing between me and the man I had married, and the way that space seemed connected somehow to a woman who had never fully accepted me as her son's wife. 6 months later, I discovered the first financial irregularity. I want to be specific about this because specifics matter. I need you to understand that I did not snoop. I did not go through Daniel's phone or his wallet or his email. What I did was open a joint bank statement because we had a joint account for household expenses and I was doing our monthly budget, which I always did. And I saw a withdrawal I did not recognize. $950 cash from a branch on the other side of the city. I asked Daniel about it that evening, calmly, just hey, I was looking at the account and I saw this withdrawal, do you remember what that was for? He paused for just a moment too long, then he said it was for car repairs. He said the shop he used was in that neighborhood. I nodded, I wrote it down in my budget spreadsheet, car repairs $950. I did not say that we had one car and I had driven that car every day for the past 3 weeks and it was running perfectly fine. I did not say that yet. Instead, I started paying closer attention to the account. Over the next 2 months, I found 3 more withdrawals I could not explain, $500, $700, $1,200. None of them matched any bill, any service, any explanation Daniel had given me, and when I added them up alongside the first one, the number was not small. I did not go to Daniel immediately. I know that might seem strange to some of you, but here is the thing, I had been in this marriage long enough to know how certain conversations went. If I came to him with questions he was not ready to answer, he would get quiet and then slightly cold and then tell me I was being paranoid or that I was creating problems where there were none. He had done that before, not with money, but with other things. Small things. Questions about where he was, whether he had spoken to someone, whether plans had changed without me being told. Every time I had asked those questions, I had been made to feel that I was the problem, that my suspicion was the issue, not whatever had caused it. So I did not go to Daniel. I went to my own records. I started keeping a separate document, dates, amounts, descriptions. I told myself I was just organizing my own financial picture, that is all. I was just a careful woman who wanted to understand the numbers. But the truth is, somewhere deep and quiet inside me, I was already afraid of what the numbers were saying. It was around this time that Patricia invited us to dinner. Not a casual dinner, a formal one at her house with Daniel's aunt and uncle and his cousin Marcus, who I had met only twice before. It was presented as a family gathering, a welcome spring dinner, nothing unusual. I made the effort, I dressed nicely. I brought flowers for Patricia's table and a bottle of wine. I helped set the table when Patricia said the help she usually hired had canceled. I poured water for everyone and asked Daniel's aunt about her garden and laughed at his uncle's slow jokes and sat at that table feeling very much like I was auditioning for a role I had already been told I would not get. The dinner was fine, polite, controlled. And then, toward the end of the evening, Patricia mentioned something, casually, like it was common knowledge, like she was surprised I had not already been told. She was talking about the family property, a parcel of land outside the city that had been in Daniel's family for 2 generations. She was talking about how glad she was that it would stay in the family, stay protected, and she looked directly at Daniel when she said that last word, protected. And Daniel nodded, not at me, at her, just a small, quiet nod. I sat very still, I smiled, I asked nothing. But on the drive home, I asked him what his mother had meant about the property being protected. He said she was just talking about the estate plan, about making sure the family's assets were organized properly. I asked if that was something he had been working on. He said he and his mother had been talking to a lawyer about a few things, yes. I asked why I had not been included in that conversation, given that I was his wife. He said it was his family's property, not a marital asset, and that I did not need to worry about it. He did not say it unkindly, that is the thing. He said it in a tone that was almost gentle, almost patient, the way you might explain something simple to someone who does not understand the situation. And that gentleness made it worse, because it meant he did not feel the need to pretend this was normal. He thought it was normal. He thought that was a perfectly fine thing to say to his wife. I looked out the window the rest of the drive home. I did not argue, I did not cry. I felt something cold and solid settle somewhere in my chest, and I thought, okay, okay, I see. I am going to tell you about the drawer now. About 2 weeks after that dinner on a Tuesday afternoon in October, I was looking for the car insurance documents. We kept paper files in a small cabinet in our bedroom, and I was pretty sure that is where Daniel kept his important papers. I was not looking through his things. I was looking for a specific folder in a shared filing cabinet. The drawer stuck a little, the way old drawers do, and I pulled it harder than I intended, and the whole thing slid out further than I meant for it to. And there in the back, underneath his old watch and a small envelope of old coins he had kept since childhood, was a letter. It was folded into thirds, plain white envelope. His name on the front in handwriting I recognized immediately because I had seen it on birthday cards and Christmas cards for 3 years. Patricia's handwriting. I stood there for a moment. I told myself it was just a letter from his mother. People write letters, that is nothing. Put it back, Sarah, it is not your letter. But I did not put it back. I stood in that bedroom with the afternoon light coming through the curtains, and I unfolded that letter and I read every single word. I am not going to repeat it line by line. Some of it I am still not ready to speak out loud, but I will tell you what it contained because you need to understand what I understood in those 4 minutes. The letter was written 8 months earlier, 8 months before I found it. Patricia had written it to Daniel in response to something he had clearly told her, a decision he had shared with her, a plan they had been discussing. The letter was her response to that plan, her approval of it, her relief that he had finally committed to it. Plan was this: Daniel had decided to keep our finances legally separated, not through an honest conversation with me, not through a mutual postnuptial agreement, not through anything that involved my knowledge or consent. He had been working with his mother and a family lawyer to restructure his financial holdings in a way that would protect them from any future marital claim. He had moved money, he had reorganized accounts, he had placed assets into a family trust that predated our marriage. The letter from Patricia praised him for this. She told him he had done the right thing. She said she had always been worried that I was after the family money, her words, not mine, the family money, and that she was relieved he had listened to reason. She said other things too. She called me ambitious in a way that meant something else entirely. She said Daniel deserved someone who came from the right kind of background. She said she hoped things would resolve themselves naturally and that Daniel would eventually find the clarity he needed. Resolve themselves. Naturally, clarity he needed. I read that letter twice, then I folded it exactly as I had found it and I put it back under the watch and I closed the drawer. I sat on the edge of our bed for a long time. I did not cry. I want to be honest with you about that. I think sometimes people expect the person in this moment to collapse, to fall apart, to become emotion in a messy and immediate way. I did not do that. What I did was get very, very calm. The kind of calm that comes when the chaos finally has a shape and a name. The kind of calm that feels almost like clarity. Because suddenly every strange withdrawal made sense. Every closed-door phone call made sense. Every time Daniel had told me not to worry, it was handled. I did not need to be involved. All of it made sense now. I had not been paranoid. I had not been creating problems. I had been married to a man who was actively, strategically protecting himself from me, and his mother had been helping him do it for at least 8 months, possibly longer. I sat on that bed and I made a decision. I was not going to confront Daniel that night. I was not going to pick up the phone and call his mother. I was not going to do anything emotional or impulsive that would warn them that I knew, because warning them would cost me everything. Instead, I was going to be patient. I was going to be smart, and I was going to get my own documentation before I said a single word. I want to be careful here about how I describe what I did next, because I need you to understand that everything I did was legal and calm and careful. I was not trying to punish anyone yet. I was trying to protect myself from a situation that I now understood clearly. I was a woman who had been operating without information in a marriage where the other side had plenty of it. I called a lawyer, not a friend, not a family member, but an actual attorney who specialized in family law. I had found her name 3 months earlier when I was researching something else entirely and had written her number down almost on instinct, the way you do when some part of you knows more than the rest of you is ready to admit. I met with her on a Thursday while Daniel thought I was having lunch with a colleague. I sat in her office and I told her everything: the letter, the withdrawals, the family trust conversation, the dinner at Patricia's, the 8 months of closed doors and handled situations. She listened without expression. Then she asked me a series of very specific questions. What was in my name alone? What was in Daniel's name alone? What was joint? When assets had been moved and whether I had any dates, whether we had filed joint tax returns, whether my name was on the mortgage. My name was not on the mortgage. That had been something Daniel suggested during the home buying process, framed as a practical tax decision. His income was higher and the loan terms were better with just his application. I had agreed, I had trusted him. My lawyer wrote several things down, then she looked at me and told me clearly what my situation was. She told me what rights I had, she told me what options I had, and she told me very specifically that there were some immediate steps I should take in terms of documenting my financial contributions to the marriage, things like records of my income going into the joint account, receipts from household purchases I had made, evidence of contributions I had made to our shared life. I spent the next 3 weeks gathering everything quietly. I requested records from our bank going back to the beginning of our marriage. I gathered every receipt, every tax return, every insurance document. I photographed things in our home that I had paid for. I kept copies of everything in a folder that I kept in my car, not in the house. I did all of this while having dinner with my husband every night, while asking him how his day was, while sitting across from him in our living room watching television. I was kind and steady and present in a way that I later realized had always been genuinely me. I am not a person who lashes out, not a person who creates drama, but it was also armor now. My calmness was armor. Then something happened that I had not planned for, but which ended up being one of the most important moments in this story. Daniel's cousin Marcus called me. Not Daniel, me, on my personal cell phone. Marcus was the cousin who had been at Patricia's dinner. He was quiet, a little awkward, the kind of person who never quite fit inside the tightly controlled image the rest of the family projected. I had always liked him for that. We had talked maybe a handful of times before, never about anything serious. He asked me if I had time to talk. I said yes. He said he needed to tell me something and that he hoped I would not tell Daniel he had called. My stomach dropped. He told me that at a recent family meeting, a formal scheduled meeting that I had not been invited to or told about, Patricia had announced that she was updating her estate documents. She was changing certain things in the family trust, and the changes specifically involved what would happen to the family property and assets in the event that Daniel's marriage ended. I asked Marcus what specifically had been changed. He said he was not entirely sure of the legal language, but the gist of it was that in the event of a divorce, Daniel would retain all family assets, and there were provisions about what I would or would not be entitled to. He said Patricia had spoken about me at this meeting in ways that made him uncomfortable. He said he did not think it was right that I did not know any of this was happening. I thanked him. I asked him to please not mention this conversation to anyone. He agreed. After I hung up, I sat in my car in a parking lot for about 15 minutes. Then I called my lawyer. She told me this information was consistent with what she had already suspected based on the financial picture. She told me she had a few more questions now and that we should meet again as soon as possible. We met the following week. By that point, my lawyer had a clearer picture of the overall strategy that had been in place. She explained to me that the asset structuring Daniel had done was not necessarily illegal on its own. Many married couples keep separate finances, and that is not inherently wrong. But the pattern of behavior, combined with the fact that I had made significant financial contributions to our shared life and had not been informed of or consented to any of these arrangements, created a meaningful legal argument in my favor. She also told me something that landed very heavily. She told me that the letter I had found, the one from Patricia, the one praising Daniel for protecting the family money from me, that letter, if it could be properly documented, was potentially important evidence of intent, not just financial organization, but a deliberate plan. I asked how one would properly document a letter you found in a drawer. She told me. I went home that afternoon. I waited until Daniel had gone to the gym. I went to the drawer, I took the letter out, I photographed every page of it on my phone in good light, then I put it back exactly as I found it. I sent the photographs to my lawyer. That was the moment the situation changed. Not because I had done anything dramatic, because I had done something quiet and precise and completely within my rights as a person who had discovered that someone was building a legal case against the life she thought she was living. November arrived. We went to Patricia's for Thanksgiving. I sat at that table and I passed the sweet potatoes and I listened to Patricia talk about her garden and her charity work and I smiled and I asked questions and I was perfectly pleasant. Patricia was pleasant in return. She asked about my job, about my mother, about whether Daniel and I had any holiday plans. She was warm in that careful, curated way of hers. And I thought about the letter, about the word ambitious, about the phrase resolve themselves naturally. I smiled and said everything was wonderful. Daniel did not notice anything different about me. That told me something. It told me how little attention he was actually paying, that a woman who had fundamentally changed her entire understanding of her marriage could sit across from him every day and he would not feel the shift. He had not been paying close attention for a long time. He had been managing me. In December, I made a decision, not because my lawyer pushed me, not because Marcus said something else. I made it because I woke up one morning, looked at the ceiling of our bedroom, and thought with total clarity, I do not want to be here anymore. Not in this room, not in this house, not in this version of my life. I had spent years building a life with someone who had spent at least part of that time protecting himself from me. I had cooked dinners and managed the budget and shown up for holidays and cried quietly in the shower over a feeling I could not name, and now I knew what the feeling had been trying to say. It had been trying to say, Sarah, the person you are building this with is not building it with you. I called my lawyer and told her I was ready to proceed. The petition for divorce was filed on a Wednesday. Daniel was served on a Friday afternoon. I know because I was not home, I had arranged to be elsewhere. I had told my sister the previous week everything that had happened, and she had driven 3 hours to spend that weekend with me. When my phone started ringing that Friday evening, first Daniel, then Patricia's number, then Daniel again, I did not answer. I sent Daniel one text message. It said, I have retained legal counsel and all communication should go through her. I then sent him her contact information. He called 7 more times that night. I did not answer any of them. I want to describe what happened in the days after, because this is where the story stops being about one letter and becomes about an entire system of behavior collapsing under its own weight. Daniel's first response, through his own lawyer, was essentially a calm and professional statement that he was open to mediation and that he hoped things could be resolved amicably, which is a reasonable legal position. I have nothing against that. But that was not the only response. Patricia called my mother who had nothing to do with any of this, who did not even know the full story yet. Patricia called her and told her that I had blindsided Daniel, that I had made decisions without giving him the chance to work things out, that I was being manipulative and financially motivated. My mother is a quiet woman, but she is not a woman you want to speak to about her children in that tone. She told Patricia that if she had concerns, she should speak to my lawyer, and she hung up the phone. Then she called me. When I told her what the letter had said about me being ambitious, about the family money, about Patricia's hope that things would resolve themselves naturally, my mother was silent for a long moment. Then she said, in a voice very careful and very steady, I am so glad you found that letter, baby. I cried then, for the first time since all of this began, not out of sadness, out of relief, out of being believed by the first person I told the whole truth to. The divorce process was not fast, and I am not going to make it sound like everything resolved cleanly and quickly. It did not. There were difficult weeks. There were legal back and forths about assets and contributions and the appropriate settlement. There were moments when Daniel's lawyer argued positions that made my lawyer's expression go carefully flat in a way I learned to read as they are not serious about that. But here is what happened with the financial picture. Because I had been meticulous, because I had 3 months of documentation before any of this began, because I had records of every financial contribution I had made to our shared life, the grocery bills, the joint account deposits from my salary, the furniture I had paid for, the household repairs, the vacation we took that I had largely funded, because I had all of that, and because my lawyer had the photographs of the letter and had been able to use them as evidence of deliberate intent in the asset structuring, the negotiation did not go the way Daniel and Patricia had planned. It did not result in me walking away with nothing, which is, I believe now, exactly what Patricia had hoped for when she helped Daniel build that wall. It resulted in a fair settlement, not a windfall, not a punishment to Daniel. A fair accounting of what I had contributed to 3 years of a shared life and what I was owed from it. I moved into my own apartment in February. My sister helped me move. My mother came and stayed for a week, and we bought a plant for the windowsill, and she made dinner in my new kitchen, and we sat together at a table that was just mine and ate and talked, and it was, genuinely, one of the most peaceful evenings I had had in years. I want to tell you about the moment Patricia tried to reach me directly, because she did. About 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, she called my number from an unknown phone I did not recognize, and when I answered, she said my name in that careful voice of hers. I said hello. She said she wanted me to understand that she had only ever wanted the best for her son, and that she hoped one day I would see that her intentions were not to hurt me. I thought about many possible responses. I thought about everything I knew. I thought about the letter and the word ambitious and the phrase resolved themselves naturally and the meeting I had never been invited to and the phone calls I had not been told about and the drawer in my own bedroom where a letter had been hidden from me for 8 months. I said, I hope Daniel finds happiness, and I hope you both understand that what you built was not protection, it was a plan, and plans have consequences. Then I ended the call. She did not call again. I have thought a lot in the months since about who I was before I found that letter. I was someone who trusted generously and stayed too long and made excuses for behavior that did not deserve excuses. I was someone who asked quiet questions and then accepted quiet non-answers and told herself that was enough. I was someone who felt something wrong for over a year and was made to feel that the feeling itself was the problem. But I also think about this. The woman who found that letter did not panic, she did not explode, she did not beg or threaten or chase, she gathered information, she found support, she made careful decisions, she stayed calm not because she was not hurting, but because she had decided that her future was worth protecting just as much as anyone else thought their assets were. There is a spec. If it kind of strength that comes from being underestimated. When people build plans around you without including you, they are making an assumption that you will not figure it out or that by the time you do, it will be too late or that you are not capable of protecting yourself. Patricia assumed all of those things about me. Daniel did too, I think, even if he would never have said it that openly. They were wrong, I want you to understand that, not in a triumphant, chest out way, just in a simple, honest, factual way. They were wrong about me. I think about the drawer sometimes. About that specific Tuesday afternoon, the sticky drawer, the watch with the old coins, the white envelope with his name on it. I think about how differently my life might have unfolded if I had been a little less curious, a little more obedient, a little quicker to close that drawer and walk away. But I was not those things, and so I read the letter, and reading it was the most important thing I ever did. The plant on my windowsill is still alive, by the way. I have had it for almost 2 years now. I talk to it sometimes, which I know sounds a little strange, but it makes me feel good. It is small evidence that I can keep something alive by myself through ordinary care and daily attention. It is doing just fine. So am I. There is a conversation I keep coming back to. It was not a big scene. It did not happen in a courtroom or at a confrontation. It happened in my car about a week before the divorce was filed, when I was sitting in a parking lot after talking to my lawyer and I called my best friend and told her the entire story for the first time. She was quiet for a long time when I finished. Then she said, "Sarah, did you have any idea? Like any idea at all?" And I told her the truth. I said I had every idea, I just kept talking myself out of it. That is the part that I sit with the most. Not the letter, not the money, not Patricia's careful voice on the phone. The part I sit with most is the year and a half of my own internal voice telling me something was wrong and the way I learned over time to argue with that voice, to soften it, to call it anxious, call it dramatic, call it a product of my own insecurity rather than what it actually was, which was accurate. I think a lot of people live inside that argument, between the voice that knows and the mind that needs things to be okay. And I think one of the most powerful things a person can do is stop choosing the version of the story that is more comfortable and start choosing the version that is true. Choosing the true version is not easy. It cost me my marriage, my home, 18 months of legal stress, and a grief that was real even though it was grief for something that had not been what I thought it was. It cost me a lot. But it gave me back something more important. It gave me back my own clear sight, my ability to trust the things I notice, my confidence that when I feel something, that feeling is worth listening to. I am 32 now. I have a job I am good at. I have an apartment that is mine, that has my books in it and my dishes and my plant on the windowsill and absolutely nothing hidden in any drawer. I have friendships that I invested in during a period when my marriage was taking up all the oxygen in my life. I have a relationship with my mother that deepened through all of this in ways I did not expect. I am not standing here telling you that everything is perfect. I am standing here telling you that everything is mine. That is a different thing. And to me, right now, it is the better thing. The letter that was never meant for me ended up being the most important thing I ever read. Not because of what it revealed about Daniel or about Patricia, but because of what it revealed about me, about the fact that I had known, about the fact that somewhere in a quiet part of myself I had been trying to silence, I had always known. When you know something, even when it is painful, even when it costs everything, even when every comfortable voice around you is telling you that you are imagining it, when you know, you know. Trust that. I have told you this whole story, all of it, and now I want to ask you one more time, have you ever talked yourself out of something you already knew? Have you ever stood in a room and felt something wrong and decided to believe the explanation instead of the feeling? Because I did that for over a year, and if this story reached you somewhere real, I want to know. Leave a comment, tell me what part hit hardest, tell me if you have been there. And if you know someone who is still in the middle of that argument between knowing and needing things to be okay, share this with them. Sometimes a story is the thing that finally gives a person permission to trust themselves.